Work out the details of a group visit beforehand. It's uncomfortable for many people to ask that money question of like, well, how am I getting paid for this, or what kind of compensation are you getting from a group visit? And exposure can be useful, but only if that's something you need. Specifically because you should always value your time. Your work and your effort is worth something, even if it's not like quantifiable in the same way as someone working in a sheet metal shop can look at a pallet and say, I have done 200 of this thing today. Your work and effort is something to be quantified. This helpful thing, or something that I found useful, was kind of like a no-brainer, which is specifically a optimal hanging height for flat work is in the range of 55 to 62 inches from the ground to the center of the painting. No one ever said that to me. Galleries function as a kind of agent for the artist in the same way as an agent works for like a talent or an actor or whatever. Their job is to promote you and to do a lot of the background work and networking and stuff that you might not otherwise have access to or be able to do yourself. The last helpful thing was just quantifying and going through this like list of all of the nerdy infinite preparation required to like do all this artist stuff. Like I love manila folders, and knowing that I can have like that's where the invoices go and that's where this goes, that's wildly helpful. Surprising thing number one: portfolio reviews are a thing. It makes sense that they are. It just never occurred to me whatsoever without having read this. People will go and just put out a notice like, hey, I'm a gallerist or I'm a this. I'll look at your portfolio and tell you what I think. This was a big surprise, which is that the art world, at least like as far as artist career long-term thinking is concerned, there is this like stock price fixing aspect that I had never even considered. Like how you price stuff and how that changes over time can determine your success. It's an addenda to the helpful thing about galleries working as agents, but this is the surprising part where it is almost exactly like having an agent, where there is a bunch of work that they're doing behind the scenes, and even if you have a sale that you did all of the legwork for and it was just in your studio, they still deserve a portion of that. Addenda, surprising thing again to the stock pricing aspect of your career. They recommend not to, even if you like blow up suddenly and get super famous, to radically change or alter your prices to compensate for that, because that can blow up in your face. And if you were to suddenly tank, that would be very bad. Some of my frustration with this chapter was how it talked about the importance of dealing with visitors and stuff, and made it seem like this like life and death important level of thing. It makes me feel like so happy to be in academia in this cozy nest. Frustrating thing is that, again, this like stock pricing thing, I think I read that portion 4 or 5 times just to try and cogitate what they were talking about. And that's exceedingly frustrating to think that there's a whole nother aspect of the long-term consequences of my work that I have to consider. To continue or harp even more on this, like the idea of how you value or price your work and what that value comes from. Like they even mentioned specifically the size of the thing generally affects the price to the positive, which is something I've noticed in my own work, is people automatically presume larger is more valuable. Collectors and gallerists or whatever, they want to know when they're coming for a visit, they want to know your process, like where you get your ideas, what inspires you, what your history may be. And at least for me in my own development, that story is super short and not particularly interesting. So it's frustrating to think that I need to create like a story to tell that may or may not reflect the truth. This is only like a minor frustration, and it's not unique to artists. It's just networking as a thing, as a necessity for a successful career in any field. I'm not very good at this. It's a skill I'm working on to be more communicative, but it is minorly frustrating. I think the most frustrating thing, if I can put them into like a hierarchy, would be the necessity of documentation of media materials, portfolios, resumes, CVs, all these things that like document your path and what you've done, and you have to have like business cards ready. And it really was like just this overwhelming amount of paperwork that they recommend. First example of an artist who's good at doing these things would be Ai Weiwei. He's great at presenting himself and his work and talking about it and crafting these narratives and stories about just him. Like there's a certain level of, I don't know if he's a narcissist, but there's a certain level of narcissism to this idea that is interesting. Stanislaus Tsikolsky is a terrible example, actually, for pretty much all the stuff in this chapter. He wrote just an unending treatise on stuff that he thought about, and he was a little fashy back in the day, and that kind of led to his like disappearing from the art world. Koons is an example of the effect that gallerists and media attention and the whims of the market can have on an artist's career. Like despite how much preparation you might put into it, it can just be like lightning striking and you luck out and tap into something. Koons maybe isn't an example of that, but you get it. This is a photo of Ellie Krakow posing in her studio obviously for an interview. This was a photo for a magazine, but you can see like the composition and everything in the studio. Everything's clean. There's like work is behind her, but the things on display are like done. So she doesn't have like trash laying around. And I really struggled with this assignment, and so I lost all track of time and didn't have the ability to do a last actual slide. So here is my dog doing a cute thing. That's her blanket, and she only sleeps on that. Thank you.